Why is it that some people can go days, weeks, or even years without having any friends, insisting they prefer their own company, yet deep down, they still feel that ache of loneliness? What's really happening beneath the surface when someone rejects social life but can't escape the pain of isolation? Is antisocial behavior just a personality trait, or is it something more complicated? A mask, a defense, maybe even a prison? In today's episode, we're going to break down the real psychology behind antisocial loneliness. We'll look at why the antisocial label is almost always a role, not an identity, and how this role shapes your experience of loneliness. We'll dig into the internal double bind of shame and superiority that traps people in isolation and explain why craving risk-free connection is a fantasy that makes genuine relationships impossible. Finally, we'll talk about what true escape from isolation actually looks like. Let's start with a truth that most people never consider. Nobody is born antisocial. You might have preferences, temperaments, or sensitivities that make socializing more challenging, but the idea that someone is fundamentally destined to avoid others is almost always a myth. In reality, antisocial behavior is not a fixed personality trait. It's a role, a psychological strategy that you build and reinforce over time, usually as a response to the unpredictability and pain of social experience. Think about what happens when social life feels dangerous. Maybe in the past, you were mocked, excluded, or made to feel like you were always one step away from embarrassment. As a result, your mind starts looking for protection, and it lands on withdrawal. Avoiding others becomes a kind of armor, a way to limit exposure to judgment, disappointment, or chaos. At first, it's just a habit. You skip the party, you stay in at lunch, you let texts go unanswered. Over time, though, the strategy becomes part of your identity. You start to see yourself as the kind of person who doesn't do people. The mask fuses with the face. Here's where the paradox emerges. The more you live behind this antisocial role, the more it shapes how you experience both yourself and the world. It starts as a defense, but soon it defines you. Now, the very idea of connection, opening up, admitting need, risking vulnerability, starts to feel like a threat to your coherence. If you suddenly showed up as needy, enthusiastic, or emotionally invested, you'd feel like you were betraying the persona that's kept you safe. So you double down on the role, convincing yourself that solitude is a preference, even as you secretly ache for real contact. The cost of this mask is huge. Every attempt to reach out or connect with other people is sabotaged by the fear of breaking character. You avoid situations that might reveal your real needs or emotional hunger. You rationalize your isolation by convincing yourself that other people are shallow, exhausting, or not worth the trouble. But underneath these stories, what you're really doing is defending a carefully constructed identity, a role that feels safer than the risk of being seen. The result is a unique form of loneliness. It's not just the absence of other people. It's the experience of being trapped behind a mask you can't remove, even when you want to. The longer you stay in this role, the harder it is to imagine what it would feel like to interact without strategy or self-protection. You end up isolated, not because you lack the opportunity for connection, but because you've built a psychological prison with walls that look like personality. This is the real paradox of antisocial loneliness. The persona you built to protect yourself from pain ends up cutting you off from the very thing you actually need. And until you recognize the mask for what it is, a role, not a fixed trait, it's almost impossible to find real, genuine connection. Once you've constructed the antisocial role, another dynamic begins to operate beneath the surface, one that most people never consciously recognize. This is the double bind. You are trapped between two powerful and opposing psychological forces, and both of them keep you isolated. On one side is shame, on the other is superiority. Most antisocial loneliness is maintained by the war between these two defenses. Let's break it down. Shame is the first wall you hit when you even consider reaching for connection. You imagine being judged, exposed, or rejected. Maybe it's a memory of past humiliation, or maybe it's just the anxiety of not knowing how you'll be received. Either way, shame makes the idea of vulnerability feel unbearable. It's not just about being seen, it's about being seen as lacking, awkward, needy, or not good enough. The mind exaggerates the cost of exposure. To avoid this pain, you retreat further behind the mask, convincing yourself that it's safer not to try. But the mind doesn't like feeling small or powerless for long. So, to counteract the sting of shame, it generates a compensatory defense, superiority. This is the narrative that says, I don't need these people. I'm different. I see through the games that everyone else is playing. You start to take pride in your isolation, imagining that your distance means you're more self-sufficient, mature, or insightful than the crowd. The irony is that this superiority isn't real confidence. It's a second mask, designed to insulate you from the pain of not belonging. So, shame tells you you're not enough to belong, and superiority tells you you're too good to need anyone. Both stories are self-protective, but together they form a psychological stalemate. Every time you feel the urge to reach out, shame floods in. Every time you feel the sting of loneliness, superiority soothes you with contempt for the people you're missing. The mind oscillates between craving intimacy and rationalizing isolation. Neither defense allows for genuine contact. One punishes you for wanting connection, and the other punishes others for not meeting your impossible standards. This double bind is why so many antisocial people feel both lonely and superior, both desperate for contact and dismissive of everyone they meet. The cycle is self-reinforcing. The longer you stay trapped, the more these defenses calcify, and the harder it becomes to imagine any other way of relating. You might even start to believe that this internal conflict is just your personality, when it's really a set of psychological strategies, each trying to spare you pain, but together are keeping you stuck. The result isn't just loneliness. It's a sense of being fundamentally split, torn between the need to be seen and the fear of being exposed, between the desire for intimacy and the safety of distance. Until you recognize this double bind for what it is, every attempt at connection will feel either humiliating or hollow. Additionally, if you listen closely to the internal world of someone who calls themselves antisocial, you'll notice that their mind is always searching for a guarantee, a way to engage with others that involves zero risk. This is where the fantasy of perfect safety takes hold. The mind insists that before you can connect, you need assurances. No embarrassment, no misunderstanding, no possibility of being rejected or exposed. Anything less feels dangerous and even intolerable. This psychological demand is not logical. It's perfectionistic. You want to connect, but only if you can control the outcome. The problem is that human connection is, by definition, unpredictable. Every real relationship involves some measure of misunderstanding, vulnerability, and risk. But for the antisocial mind, unpredictability feels like chaos, and chaos threatens the fragile coherence you've worked so hard to maintain. So, you start filtering every social possibility through this standard, subconsciously waiting for a safe situation that never actually arrives. And as a result, you begin to retreat into your imagination. You think about what it would be like to have close friends, to be seen and accepted, but you only allow yourself to daydream about it. Real people become threatening, too messy, too unpredictable, too capable of disrupting the careful balance you've established. Every time an opportunity for connection appears, you automatically scan for risk and pull back before anything real can happen. And the fantasy of a risk-free relationship becomes more vivid as actual relationships become rarer. Ironically, this avoidance doesn't protect you, it amplifies your loneliness. The more you wait for perfect safety, the less you participate in real life. You become a spectator to your own social existence, imagining scenarios where you could connect, but always withhold yourself in reality. The mind confuses this withdrawal for wisdom or maturity, but it's actually just a byproduct of fear. You're not avoiding people because you don't care. You're avoiding them because your standard for emotional safety has become so absolute that nobody, not even you, can meet it. The real tragedy is that the mind's attempt to eliminate social risk guarantees that you never actually experience connection. Only the ache for it. You miss the point that every genuine bond is built through the exact discomfort and uncertainty you're trying to avoid. Connection cannot be rehearsed into perfection or constructed in the mind. It requires stepping into the unknown, risking awkwardness, and tolerating the reality that sometimes you will get hurt. That's the price of belonging, and it's the one thing the antisocial persona is least willing to pay. So, the fantasy of perfect safety becomes a kind of prison. You don't just avoid others, you avoid the process of becoming someone who can handle imperfection. As long as you're holding out for guarantees, loneliness is inevitable. You're not just isolated from other people, you're cut off from the part of yourself that's capable of real, messy, unpredictable human life. Okay, now that I have explained all of this, what's the actual solution to this problem? Most solutions you hear to fix antisocial loneliness usually lead to familiar advice. Get out there, meet people, push your comfort zone. But if you've spent years trapped behind a carefully constructed persona, these strategies fail for one reason. They treat socializing as a behavioral problem, when in reality, it's a question of agency and identity. The solution isn't about forcing yourself into social situations. It's about breaking your allegiance to the role you've been playing, even if that means betraying the very mask that's protected you until now. The real solution is agency through deliberate self-betrayal. What does self-betrayal mean in this context? It means acting in ways that contradict the identity you've built to keep yourself safe. For the antisocial person, the mask is a guarantee of predictability, never risking embarrassment, never showing need, never letting anyone see the unguarded self. But the same mask that protects you from humiliation also prevents you from being recognized, accepted, or truly seen. To escape the prison of antisocial loneliness, you have to be willing to violate your own script. That could mean admitting you're lonely. It could mean initiating a conversation even when you expect awkwardness, or letting someone witness your anxiety or uncertainty instead of hiding it. Agency is not the absence of fear. It's your capacity to act despite fear, to enter situations where you don't control the outcome, to allow for the possibility of discomfort or rejection, and to tolerate the emotional volatility that comes with real life. Most people imagine that change happens when you feel ready or safe. In reality, readiness never comes. Safety is a moving target. Change begins when you decide to move anyway, exposing the persona you've used for protection to a reality that may not always be kind, but is at least honest. In this context, your progress is going to be measured by your willingness to drop the rules that have governed your social existence, not by how many friends you make or how outgoing you appear. If your old script was never let them see you sweat, your new practice is to allow sweat. If your old rule was only speak when you know exactly what to say, your new practice is to risk saying the wrong thing. Each deliberate act of self-betrayal chips away at the mask, proving to your own mind that the real risk was never in being awkward, but in never being seen at all. So, the solution isn't a quick fix or a performance. It's a process of rewilding your sense of agency, allowing yourself to be human again, unpredictable, sometimes messy, sometimes rejected, but alive. Over time, you discover that agency and connection are two sides of the same coin. The more you allow yourself to act without perfect protection, the more space you create for genuine relationship. The freedom you were looking for was never about being alone or above it all. It was about regaining the power to choose how you show up, to risk your real self, and to find connection, not in spite of your flaws, but through them. That's it for today's episode. If anything here challenged you or made you rethink the story you tell yourself about loneliness and connection, take a minute to reflect. Where are you still holding on to a role that no longer serves you? If you found this useful, let me know in the comments. Does this match your experience, or did I miss something? And if there's a topic you want broken down with the same level of depth, leave your suggestions below. Thanks for watching, and take care of yourselves.